All right. Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. I was muted in one thing, but not another. So hopefully you can hear me now. Anyway, what was I saying? It was a great weekend, but a long, a long weekend. It's about a 3.5 hour drive coming back from Boston to Brooklyn, and after spending the whole day at the con, whew, that was a rough ride, but I had a really good time. Direct Sun actually posted this in the chat question in the chat earlier, which was PAX mask required? Yes, PAX was mask required. I saw some other comments where one person was saying that they have asthma and so the mask doesn't work for them, and so they hope, since it's not federally mandated, that they kind of people drop the masks thing. I get it. Look, you have to do whatever's right for your comfort and your health and all that jazz. I, for one, wasn't upset with the mask being required. I think cons, and anytime you're in a space like that where you're close contact with a lot of people, especially given what we know in sort of the post-COVID world, I was fine with the masks. I don't remember hearing or seeing anybody that having issues with the masks. They did have eating areas and spots where you could take off your mask if need be. I'm sure it's a playground for all kinds of bacteria and viruses and things, because people are in close contact. You're touching the same things and you're breathing in the same air. Now the Boston Convention Center, I think that's what it's called, where it is actually, in terms of convention centers, and I probably mentioned this when I talked about PAX East last time, quite nice. And one of the things that's nice about it is in the main expo area. So basically there's essentially a main expo area, and then there's things kind of wrapping around it. So you'll have an east side area, west side area, and there may even be a north and south area, I'm not sure, in the middle, or kind of like a hot dog almost. The meat in the center of the hot dog is the main expo area. The main expo area has really tall ceilings. It really is just vast vertically, and it even has windows kind of angled in at the top so that you get a lot of natural light, which I think also just helps a lot. You don't feel like, I think sometimes in some of the older convention centers, I want to say the Javits Center here in New York City, which I don't think is super old, but it can feel just kind of, even though the ceilings aren't, it's not like the ceilings are 6 feet tall or something, but it just feels like you're in a warehouse, just kind of cramped area. Whereas in that Boston Convention Center, when you're in the main expo area, it just feels like you have all this kind of light and air above you. It just gives it a nicer vibe. I feel like you just feels less oppressive. And it probably helps in terms of someone, at least, that there's a lot of volume of air for things to go and get dissipated into. But all that said, I think I was fine wearing the mask, especially when you're potentially sitting down at a role-playing game table for a few hours and you're in kind of a smaller space, all this stuff. COVID is a concern. Other things are a concern. I don't know. I don't think it was a Boston thing. I think it was just a PAX thing. I think they just want to be probably safer rather than sorry kind of thing. So it is what it is. It wasn't, they didn't check for COVID, because I think last year you actually had to show they had sort of vax, proof of vax kind of thing. They didn't have that this time. They just had the masks. So I think it was fine. But let me see. What am I going over? So I've posted some videos and I made a playlist, PAX East. The last video, I didn't record as many things as I wanted to. The last one, which was an interview with someone at Eldritch Foundry, will go up tomorrow. And I might try and see if they're amenable. Eldritch Foundry makes custom minis. And I think we talked about at the time, we'll see what comes about looking at going through their app and sort of see. It seems pretty neat. And they have I don't know if it's going to launch yet, but they have a pretty good deal coming. Either it's here now or it's coming really soon. Or essentially you'll be able to buy a sample. And the way he laid it out to me, which I think is in the video, but I'm talking here, so I'll just spit it out. But you can check the video tomorrow for his words, is that you'll be able to essentially order a sample. Now it'll be a random sample. You're not gonna be able to pick what it is, but you get a sample all you're doing is you're paying shipping and handling. So let's say I don't know what that number would be. So you spend $10 shipping and handling. They send this sample to you. And the idea is that the reason is because they feel pretty strongly that their work holds up, that it's good work, and they feel like if you just can see it, get it in your hands, and if you're someone that uses minis and this is your thing, you get it, you see it, you're going to say, ooh, that looks good, right? But they think that their product is strong enough. They're like, we're just going to send you one. Just pay us for the handling and the shipping and handling. We'll send you one. and then you'll be so impressed by that you will want to come back and order something else. And if you do that, if you do then say, yeah, I do want to order something else, then you can take the money you spend on shipping and handling and put it, and then basically you get a credit towards some other mini. So I was like, that's a pretty cool system, because granted, if I don't like it, okay, I spent $10 on this mini that I don't like. But if I do like it, then essentially I get that for free, whatever it is. And I'm sure it's some kind of humanoid. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. It's probably going to be some sort of generic guy mini. But then I get that for free, and I get $10 or whatever the number is, shipping and handling number, off of whatever I order next. Pretty darn cool. There's more of that in that interview. The nice thing about PAX East for me is I have family in Boston, so I'm able to stay with them. So that kind of alleviates the cost of staying in a hotel and doing that stuff. So it's really nice for me. It was busy. I didn't get to go Thursday, Friday, really. I showed up Friday evening. I just had work stuff I just couldn't get out of. So I missed Thursday and pretty much all Friday. I only showed up at the con on Friday just to pick up my badges, and I missed when the will call windows closed. So I wasn't even able to really pick up my badge. So I only had the 2 days, the Saturday and Sunday. Of course, Saturday being by far the most busy day at the con. But it was a really great trip. The one thing I like that they have there I've noticed for the other PAX and this one, there's actually decent food options in the convention center. Now, you may not think the food is very important at a con like this, but in Philly, the PAX Unplugged, their con is right by Reading Terminal Market, which has really good food options. It's kind of smack that in an area where there's a lot of food around. So if you don't want con food, it's very easy within a couple of blocks to go get, and I mean, just across the street, really, and you can get some excellent food. Now, this PAX, not so much. There is stuff around the convention centers, and I think it's called the Seaport District or Seaport Neighborhood, but there's nothing super close. And it was kind of rainy on Saturday and kind of windy. You got to kind of walk a bit of a ways, I think. Maybe there's some secret locations. So I do feel like you're more apt to be stuck at the con looking for something to eat there. Now they have kind of your, Aramark sort of standard kind of stadium, whatever, convention center sort of food court, which I don't think is very good. But they got a couple spots where you can get local food, and they have some food trucks that come in. A couple of them came in from New York City because I recognize them, or I don't know if they have outposts in Boston. But you actually get pretty good food. And I don't know if I am maybe starting up talking about food, but I think it's important because you spend a lot of money on this con food. I mean, I spent more money on the food at the con than I did at anything else at the con. I only bought this T-shirt, which I think was $18 maybe. And then I got a game for my daughter, which I think was maybe $20 or maybe even less than, maybe it was 15 or 16. And that's each one of those was probably cheaper than what I spent on food. And you end up having at least 2 meals, or I was there fully 2 days at the con. So there was definitely 2 lunches there at the con. So I spent more on food than anything else. So it's kind of like you want to have decent food. And thankfully there can be some decent food. There's still the super overpriced bubble tea vendor who had lines going around the block, essentially. I don't know. I mean, people love their bubble tea, great, but the bubble tea, and it's not that it's bad because I had it last year, but you're spending $10, $12, $15 for a bubble tea, which just seems crazy. I mean, you're 3 times the price of what you would get anywhere else. And this is some kind of black tea mix for the working man. Now, I played one role-playing game while I was there, and that was Morkborg, and I did do a video on Morkborg. I'm trying to think if there's anything I didn't really cover in the video. So, well, I guess I'll go a couple things. The whole PAX experience, or the PAX setup, is good because I did get to interview Jerry, one of the 2 Penny Arcade main guys. He just happened to be wandering around, and he says it better be bubble tea +1. Yeah, it should have been. And I heard him talking, and I guess I kind of knew this to be true. I didn't really think about it. That the PAX as conventions, they started as video game conventions, but because I think both the Penny Arcade guys are big tabletop fans, they would sort of put in a tabletop area at PAX. So at PAX East, even though it's mostly about video games, there is a burgeoning tabletop area, and the whole genesis of PAX Unplugged was that the tabletop stuff was getting more and more popular, that they got to a point where they reached a point where they could say, hey, we can just have a con just on tabletop stuff. But I really appreciate that they do that. So while PAX East from, say, a role-playing game one is not going to be as big or maybe as other cons, certainly I think Gary Con was at the same time this year, and hopefully I'll get to talk to, maybe I'll get Daniel from Bandits Keep, because I know he was there running games, and get him on to talk about Gary Con. You do have kind of a really good tabletop area. And one of the setups there in the tabletop area, they had D&D Adventures League. They had this Gehenna Games, which I think I might have mentioned at talking one of the earlier cons. I'm not really sure what they do, but they run some kind of, I don't know, it just gives me a weird vibe, because I just feel like they're leaning into the kind of grim dark, which I guess is great for some, but I don't know. I don't want to, it's like, we have games that just seem to be kind of leaning into like, yeah, our games are dark and ooh, gritty, and they're gloomy and grim. And I don't know, maybe feels too emo to me. I should probably one time check it out, but they were there. And then there's a third group that was this Gamers On, I think it was called Games On Demand, that's there. And the Games On Demand, they're all volunteers, the stuff's free, and they're essentially just helping to schedule work with GMs who want to run games there. Again, the GMs aren't being paid either, want to run games and run them at the con, and they'll set up a system. Now their system, they don't have any kind of scheduling, and I know I've talked about this at PAX Unplugged that I didn't like about some of this, and I think, this is a group it's not official PAX, it's just this group. So if they want to run it the way they want to run it, I guess it's what they want to do. They just do sort of on, it's just in person. So they have their slots will line up, and you want to get, like when I showed up there at 10 on Saturday, there was I think it was around, I got through everything and I'm kind of walking around, and it's 10:30 or so, and they were having people line up for their 11 o'clock slot. So you come and you can look at the games that are available at that time slot, and then you get in the line. And then some of the people who are running games, I think they're running like an either or game. So the guy who was running Mork Borg wasn't just running Mork Borg, he was running Mork Borg or some other game. And it was really up to whoever's kind of first in line who goes to play in that game, says, I want to play in this game. And they choose that one. And then the other game gets knocked off the list. I ended up being kind of in the back of this line. So it was kind of dicey. So I'm like, oh man, there's basically a good chance that Mork Borg is not even going to be the game that ends up being offered, because all it has to do is someone in front of me just has to say, if the game hasn't been chosen already, I want to play that other game, and then Mork Borg kind of goes off the list, because of course the guy can only run one game at a time. But I was lucky in that they chose Mork Borg. Now, with the interesting, and I wish at some point I'll figure out how to do this, where I could have said to folks like, hey, I'd love to talk to you and maybe get you on camera, because I would have loved to have gotten some of the reasoning behind people choosing the games that they chose, because I didn't mention this in the video, but I was, other than the guy who was running Mork Borg, the guy running Mork Borg was most certainly older than me. Everyone else the other players, and I think there was 4 other players, were younger than me by a good margin, which I think is great, because that shows that younger folks are interested. They picked this game, they wanted to play it, and that's the kind of stuff I want to see, because that's how OSR, NSR, whatever, this kind of gaming is going to remain relevant, is not as if old, people like me who just keep getting older are playing it, but that younger people are playing it. And here, you're actually kind of seeking it out and finding it. I would have loved to have gotten a little bit of time, but to ask folks, hey, like, where'd you hear of Mork Borg? Like, why'd you pick Mork Borg? Like, what was it about it? What do you know? Kind of thing, right? Because I'm curious. I think that's information that I think it would be great to have, to understand about folks who may be not coming from the kind of spots that we're coming from. And at least one of the guys maybe they had technically played an RPG, but they were super new, because when we got into doing stuff, like, he didn't know, he really didn't know anything, I think he was like, oh, roll a 20-sided die, and he's just kind of looking at this big pile of dice on the table, and someone else is going like, handing them the die, or oh, you roll this thing, and this is how you do it. Very simple kind of mechanics. Oh, just roll roll this die, and do this. And he's just kind of, there was a lot of sort of struggling, kind of helping this person through. I think they still had a great time. It was interesting, because I would not have thought of Mork Borg as maybe the game I would say, this is the first game you should play. But it was. And the other folks, I didn't get the sense that they were necessarily like super hardcore RPG veterans either, but I didn't have a chance to know. No, Sorian is sipping cursed convenience store coffee -1. Yeah, that's definitely cursed. So it was all a bunch of new folks, and the guy gave the run through of kind of a little bit of what OSR is, which I thought was interesting. I wish I would have recorded their spiel, just again because hearing somebody else try to describe it, it was essentially like, hey, it's you're gonna die. You want to cheat in the in the sense of get he didn't really describe it, but I think he meant cheat and not in terms of lie about your dice or your modifiers or things like that, but you want to try to get everything, cut as many corners in the game world. You don't want to fight fair, right? You want to do all the stuff that you can do. And then I think that just the fact that just try anything. Don't worry about what's on your sheet or what it says you can do. Just try anything. The game was okay. It's really hard for me to judge. It was a very linear experience. And I think depending on the crowd, it's probably very depending on the crowd, really, like what con you're at. Like, maybe if you ran this at, say, Gary Con, people might find it not as successful because maybe you assume, at least at Gary Cons, you're playing with a lot of folks that play a lot of games all the time and really want to do something interesting. I think you might want to lean into more, I don't know, maybe just a higher difficulty in a sense, or just more complexity. But for this crowd, whether the guy, I don't know how the guy could have known who was going to be running it. For this one, I thought, you know what, it may not be to my taste, but I think it worked because I can imagine this particular group of players. It took a while for them to kind of get into it. They were a little bit hesitant to do things. People weren't really doing sort of out of the box kind of thinking. People were pretty much just striving ahead, sort of interested to see where things go. And because everything had sort of a very all the trappings, the kind of body horror, kind of the sort of that, I feel like he did really channel the sort of thematic Mörk Borg trappings, if you will, that it didn't really, I don't think the players really noticed that we basically had, we didn't even have not even branching paths. We really just, it was a straight shot with just, encounter, some exploration or investigation, encounter, just all the way down to the end. And, I look at it from a purely technical standpoint. I'm like, wow, this is really just, you map it out on a board and it's just like, boop, boop, boop. You just kind of have one trail down. But I don't feel like if I talked to the other players afterwards, they really would have recognized that, because especially with the new system, you're kind of getting used to things and you're trying to figure out what you can do and you're having fun sort of playing these new abilities. One guy, I forget what the ability was or the power, but he had this, he could summon some skeletons and he got a lot of run out of summoning his skeletons, and he enjoyed doing that, and he was using them good effect, using the skeletons to kind of get on one of these creatures or to scout ahead or to do things. And he really he used them, I think, to the best ability that they had. Not all of us had abilities like that, and my guy had sort of a lock, he was good at lock picks, but we didn't run into anything that was locked, so I didn't have a chance to use it. That's fine. Some of the other people, I'm not even sure what some of the other players' powers were that maybe didn't get quite as much run. One character definitely got knocked down a couple times, but her character didn't die at all, but she definitely was like down and back and down and back. So she had a little bit of that dead time in combat, though I suppose that's better than just flat out dying, though maybe not. I don't know. In terms of the game, I think that I wonder whether if she just gone to 0 like in ye old, say, BX or something, and just died, and then because he had showed us where the online character generator was so it'd been easy for her just pop up another person. Maybe she would have gotten something that she liked better. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. We did go through the whole character generation bit at the beginning of the session. And I think, and I mentioned in the video, I don't know that that's the most efficient use of the time, but the guy who was running it was really super into selling people on Mörk Borg. And he doesn't work for a free league, because I even went and when I talked to the free league, the guy there at the free league thing, I think it's not, I haven't too, but I didn't, it's not in there where I was saying like get this guy on the payroll, because he was really like selling the heck out of all the Mörk Borg products. He was just somebody that was super into it. And I think that's an important thing to come up to talk about when you're talking about any of these experiences playing these games. I just was able to play in that one game, And whatever I may say about, well, gee, if it was the perfect module or adventure, it might be a little different or whatever, blah, 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 is the fact that all these people are running things they want to play. In fact, the guy said it in the line. He, when we're waiting in line, one of the guys said that, like, look, all these GMs are here on their own time, on their own dime, to play games that they love. And they want to play the game. Hey, Terrence, they want to show you the game. They want to experience the game. Some of the folks who are running these games, and the games were mostly very indie. There was Mörk Borg. There was no, I think Mörk Borg was probably the biggest game in terms of, most mainstream of the games. There were some designers running their own games, and all these folks are just running games to run them. So they all want to have a good time. They all want to show you a good time. They want to show you like the system that they love. And so, you want to take that into consideration with whatever you may want to say about them as a player, whatever, right? These folks are just kind of do something nice and run this game. And certainly this guy clearly loved him some Mörk Borg. The only thing is with the sessions, I would have tried to play more, but it's just something. It's hard. I'm still balancing how to spend my time at these cons. I don't have it locked down yet what I should be doing. I'm getting there. I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better at figuring out kind of the approaches and sort of. But for me, it's a lot of muddling around, and then doing something, muddling around, doing something, and then I found that if I'm going to try to talk to people or just kind of walk around the con or just see stuff, then it's very easy, I guess, to get locked down, right? I played 3 hours. It was a 4-hour session, but maybe it was 3.5 hours of Mörk Borg, and I could have gotten back in line and then played another 4 hours of 3 or 4 hours something else. But then, like, that's all I've done all day. I mean, then it's, well, that's the whole day was playing 2 of those, and then they run games. I mean, they play. So the way it works is the vendor part of the con shuts down at 6. But then other elements, like where you're playing games and stuff, at least the tabletop games, some of the other things don't close until midnight. So I could have probably played, I could play 3, but a lot of other stuff just kind of everything closes down. So you can end up, if you want to, spending one of your whole days at the con just playing 2 games. Now, maybe if I'd come on Thursday, like I wanted to, and had Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, I could have spent like, okay, I'm just going to spend Thursday or Friday. Or Saturday maybe would have been best because it's the busiest. I'll just play some games. But since I was down to 2 days, just 2 days at the con, I was hesitant to then book myself another 4 hours where I was just gonna be kind of sitting in that one experience because I wanted to. Hey, you want to move around. The other thing I feel bad about is I've got the badge I have is a content. I don't have my badge sitting here somewhere. It says content creator on it, and a lot of times I was walking around with I have a pretty good rig. People were giving me some compliments on my rig. It's not super fancy, and I hesitate to even call it a rig. Let me see if I have my thing. So I have this mic. Oops, I got this mic that seems to be on for some reason, right? So I got this mic, and then this goes on. They call it the hot shoe, or it's a cold shoe mount onto your camera. And I have, maybe it isn't here, or is it here? And then I have this here, which, hold on a second. I got this. So if you can picture, the phone goes in here, though you'd be facing kind of this way. This would be the bottom of the camera. Oops, this would be the bottom, or the bottom of the camera is the top, or the phone. The camera lens is kind of here. You can, and then I can plug stuff in. I had something set up, and I kind of walk around. You see the videos I'm doing. I'm kind of doing this sort of thing, but it's very light. It's easy to carry around. And everything's already on my phone. And with the state of things, which is just kind of crazy, you can kind of edit and publish stuff on my phone. Just totally from the phone. Get on the Wi-Fi, do a couple things. And I'm generally not editing much these days anyway. I'm just really just pushing it out. So super, super easy to do and walk around. It's not heavy and it's not burdensome. But what happens is I'm walking by and I like video games. But, look, this channel, not generally about video games. I'd love to do stuff with video games. Maybe I should do a second channel with video games on it. But you go by these video game booths and like people they see you have this content creator badge and they're all over you. Oh, whatever. And I just feel bad. I'm like, yeah, this is great. And I'll talk to them, but I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll come back or something. But I'm trying to be like, man, I almost want to tell them like, don't waste time talking to me. I'm not the content creator you're looking for. But especially at this con, I think they figure most folks are here covering video games and not covering tabletop stuff. There were two guys that were super nice, and I got to find I think I got their cards here. I want to give them a shout out. It was it these guys? Hold on a minute. Let me see. Where's my glasses? I don't know. I have my glasses in my pocket. Here they are. Let me see if it was these guys or not. Was it them? I think it was Mythic. Was it Mythic Protocol? I think so. I think it was these guys, Mythic Protocol. Super nice. They're from Indonesia. And they were here with their game, which essentially was like a Diablo with guns would be the best way to put it. In fact, that's what it looked like when I was looking at the monitor. And that's when the guy came up. That was the first thing he said. It's like, yeah, it's like Diablo with guns. It looks super cool. They gave me like some Indonesian coffee that I have to try. They gave me some Indonesian coffee candy. Really nice guys. I didn't end up making it back over there just because by the time I was like, oh, I should go back to those guys, it was kind of Sunday afternoon. And I was just feeling like, oh, I'm toast. I'm done. But I want to give them a shout out. You should check it out. I think I don't know if they're in early access yet on Steam. Next time, maybe next year I'll have a game plan so I can at least highlight some video games. The other thing too is I don't really love, at least at the moment, like, I don't know, I don't really want to play the demos there. Like, it's something like if I could play the demos at home or somewhere I would like it, but I don't know. I'm not really feeling playing the demos right there, but I like watching them. But it's really hard when I got this creator badge and I've got this thing and I'm sitting there looking at the monitor like, oh, do you want to play? Do you want to play? And I'm like, I really just want to watch some folks play it or just watch the demo. Like, I really am satisfied with that. I'm not trying to kind of slag off on your game or make some statement about how I think I don't like your game because I don't want to play it. It's like, no, really. I always make the excuse like, I'm just tired or I'm just taking a break or I just got here, something like that. But I feel bad because, these guys, especially there's a lot of these sort of indie creators out there who are really putting out amazing stuff. And I want to support them, but I just don't have a lot of mechanisms to support them yet. And I think one time I was at a New York, like there was like a New York con. I still get a lot of hits on these little shorts I put out about some video games where I just filmed watching the monitor basically. And but I think it just gives the wrong impression. It doesn't help anybody. I think people see it and then they realize my channel's not about video games and then they just curse my name. It just ends up being, I gotta figure something out. But those guys in particular are really nice. Terrence asks, get any cool interviews? Well, I got a couple. So I talked to, I don't know I guess it depends on what's cool, right? So I got to talk to the Free League again, the same guy who I've talked to now. It's also cool because now I've been to a few of these. I think this is my fourth PAX. So a few people like the guy at Free League who does a lot of their events. I was like, hey, like, remember me? Like, we talked at PAX Unplugged. Now I'm back here again. And he was, the Free League folks are just super kind. They're just kind. I don't know. I feel like they spoil. Like, I feel like they're too nice to me, and like I'm not anybody. Like, I don't even know. I wonder, like, geez, how nice are they? The people they really want to be nice to, because they're super nice to me. I mean, I showed the picture, and unfortunately I meant to bring the bag because I had a box of Alien stuff, but he basically just sent me off with all the Alien books. And it's one of those things, like, I don't know how to handle it because I don't go to talk to the person to try to wheedle freebies off it. Like, I'm not trying to play that game of like doing that. Like, I'm literally just talking there, having the conversation. I'm just kind of wrapping up. I'm like, all right. And he turns to me and goes, hey man, like, what don't you have? And I'm standing kind of behind the booth. I'm talking to him and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't think I have any of the Aliens stuff. So he's like, hey man. So he tells the other guy, hey, hand me that box, and just plunked one of all the Aliens stuff in there. And he's like, you're going to need to run to your car. And I'm like, joking. I'm like, hey man, thanks. I just feel so weird. So I'm like, I hope the guy doesn't feel like I just come in here talking to him to get myself over so I can win some, get some, Alien stuff. But they don't bat an eyelid, about it. Like, I got, where is it? It's somewhere here too. Hold on a second. If I can dig it out. I know. Preparation. Sorry, Bruce. So this one came in the mail. It's hard to see with the glare. This is Icon, which is a new, I guess, box of cards from Free League that they just sent me I didn't even ask them for it. You know, I was getting ready to go to PAX, and I saw that icon, which they already sent me the digital thing for icon, but it was like icons, you know, it's you know, it's released now or whatever. And then I saw like shipping notification. I'm like, what shipping notification? You know, and it's Free League shipping notification, and you know, 1 box of icon. I'm like, you know, I mean, they're super nice, and I'm not even trying to put myself over, like, look at all the free stuff. But I mean, I really just can't. I just can't stress enough, I think, just how nice those folks are for really no reason at all. Because in no way do I deserve any of the kindnesses they've shown me, and not even just in that stuff, but just in, I don't know, embracing a small. Because look, you guys are here, you're watching it, but it's, you know, I don't have a large audience. I'm not. I pale in comparison to most everybody else on YouTube. So I feel like I'm the least deserving of being able to repay the various kindnesses, and yet they you know, they do them to me, and yet they hand them down upon me. So, you know, Free League, they're fine folks, and their stuff is awesome too. Like, it's not even like, oh, they're giving me a bunch of stuff, but their stuff is crappy. It's like, no, their stuff is amazingly nice. We talked about the video. We talked about the Kickstarter they're doing for Walking Dead. I never watched the show. I didn't read the comics. And I caught him, you know, the one thing with that interview, I feel bad a little bit for him, because I feel like he was just like, it was Sunday afternoon and I'm tired, like he's tired. I don't know if that was like the best you know, interview ever. It's just kind of and it was impromptu too, where I just showed up and I'm like, hey man, you're like, you know, remember me? I was here. It's like, you have some time, you want to talk about something, like we can do something, right? And it's like, oh yeah, let's come on. And like, and then, you know, I was literally like, well, what's coming out now? What do you want to talk about? And he's like, oh, can we talk about the Kickstarter? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the Kickstarter. And then that was it. So it was not something that was kind of scheduled and planned out. It's just there. And then I think probably to Parents' point of like cool interviews, well, the big one was getting, you know, Jerry from Penny Arcade to come and sit down. And he was like, I don't know, I really can't stress enough just how nice and, I won't say normal, just, or maybe down to earth or just regular he was. So the story with this was that I'm sitting in, so they have a press area, which is a real boon. I always say, like, the press, like the media pass, the content creator pass, there are a few things that these media passes, they do for you that are good. One is you go through separate lines. So when you're getting into PAX, they have basically a security line, and they have, especially on Saturday, depending, you can really, we tended to get there early in the morning. So the sort of regular line was not intense at that point, but there's a really long line. All it is going through and doing the security check. But media gets to go through a much quicker line, because there's never a bunch of people going through it at once. It's just, you just kind of go through. So that's like great. Number one, that's great. Also, will call, you just bop to a different part of the line. So that's also great. So, but that's only, will call only really is when you're getting your badge. It's only like a one-time thing. But that every day when you have to go through that line, if you leave the building and come back, it's really nice not to have to do that. They also have a media room, which you can go to, and it's just for media folks, and it's got different Wi-Fi in there. They actually, this year they had lockers up there. So you could, if you had, like, I ended up carrying my backpack around, but I could have put my backpack down and kind of gone in and out of there. You can take your mask off and eat your lunch in there. So you kind of had spaces you can kind of go to sort of just kind of get away. People talk, you know, there's a lot of different people in there. Nobody I really recognized, but just folks. I did end up talking to a couple of guys who's, where did I put that stack of cards? I could try to find them. I don't know what I did with it. Because I would shout them out, but I don't know what I did with the cards. Anyway, so there are a few times during the day where I would just bop in there, kind of chill out, and just take a breather, and maybe eat something, drink something. A couple times I was uploading a video, or just uploading it into, you know, I'm on an iPhone, so I put it up in the iCloud and I can get it down onto my laptop later. But I'm essentially doing that kind of spiel, and I see, you know, and I'm listening, and I'm kind of watching people, and then I'm kind of sitting there, and I see Jerry Holkins walking in, and he's kind of just walking around. He's got a little bag with him. I think he told me later that he had bought something for his daughter or something. He's just kind of walking. He's kind of walking around, just wandering. And at first I'm like, oh, that's, you know, Jerry. Okay. you know, and he's just sort of walking. I'm thinking he must be looking for somebody because maybe somebody had scheduled an interview or whatever. Then he leaves. And he comes walking through again. And he talks to a couple other people, says something, and then he kind of leaves. And then I'm thinking there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, man, you know what I should do? If I had any guts at all, I would just try to pull him aside and say, like, you know, and say something to him, or just like say something. So then he comes in again, and he starts talking, and he's talking about food, something or other. And then I pipe up, and I go like, oh yeah, there's that. And we ended up talking about, like, I think soup dumplings or something. But then I just sort of, I don't know what I did, but I kind of faltered at the end of it. And then he kind of turned and then walked away again. And I was like, I should have asked him if he could kind of sit down with me. Give me a minute, if he could give me a minute. But he was super cool. We were just talking food. It was like soup dumplings. And he was mentioning soup dumplings on the West Coast. And I told him about, you know, kind of soup dumplings in New York City. And he'd actually been to one of the places. And he was like, oh, that place closed down, I think. And like, oh, okay. So it was kind of cool, but didn't really lead anywhere. And I just kind of let it drop. And then I was like, oh, why did I had this one chance and I let it drop. But then he came back and he was talking to some other people. And then another guy came in and was looking for him to do an interview. And I thought, shoot, you know what? I've missed my shot, right? I've missed my shot because now he's going to have this other interview and then he's probably going to bail out. That's probably what he was looking for to begin with, looking for that guy. And now that guy's here and then he's going to, you know, go vanish to the super VIP room, wherever he is. But when they were getting ready to go into their interview, I said, like, hey man, would you mind coming to, you know, give me a few minutes before you go? And he was like, no, for sure. I got you. He was like, oh yeah, absolutely. He said, I got you. Like, all right. So now the next thing's happening is they're doing this interview, but this space that I'm in, there's actually two media rooms. One of which is like your main sort of general media room. And the other one is one that's kind of an overflow, but it's also where you could book it. And if people were booking in advance, so you could have a quiet space to have an interview. So, you know, off the craziness of the main areas, but also because a lot of the other media room people are talking and yip-yapping back and forth. So you can have a quiet spot. So I'm sitting there and I'm listening to the interview he's giving this guy. And it's funny because the guy who's doing the interview, it must have just been on audio because he didn't have any video equipment. He didn't seem to know anything about like PAX or Penny Arcade or anything. It was really kind of interesting. I was just kind of like, how do you come on? And it was funny too, because before he showed up, these other guys were talking and he just turned to them and goes like, oh, hi, I'm Jerry. And they're like, oh, hi. And he's like, and I said something like, oh, like talking. He's like, oh yeah, I'm Jerry. I'm the founder of PAX. And they're like, oh, that was funny too. Cause I'm like, you're here covering PAX and you don't know what the Penny Arcade guy. Now, granted, I know he's wearing a mask, but if you've seen the guy, it's like, he's pretty easy to recognize, I think, in silhouette, even if you haven't seen his face. But that was just interesting to me too, because you show up to cover something, and then like the guy who's one of the founders, who's one of the marquee, you know, doing the thing, you don't like know who that is. So that was kind of funny too. But then somebody else comes in, and they're closing up their interview, and then somebody else comes in and says, oh, we reserved the room, so can you please, you know, pack it up? And I'm like, okay, sure. But I'm trying to slow pack it because I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to leave the room, and then Jerry's gonna come out, and I'm not gonna be there to kind of remind him, and he's just gonna walk away, and I'm gonna lose that shot. So I like really slow packed my stuff, slow moving around, and I caught him, and I was like, oh hey, do you still have a couple minutes? And he was just like, oh yeah, absolutely. And we went. We weren't in the media room. If you look at you can't really tell if an interview, but there's basically some kind of nice chairs just in the sort of the hallway area outside where these meeting rooms are. And so we just kind of sat over there, and he gave me almost, 30 minutes. And this is kind of not long before he's going to show up on the main stage to do the Acquisitions Incorporated stuff. So it's not like he, just from a scheduling time, like he had all the time in the world. It's like he literally didn't. And still, he was just super nice. Sat down, we ran through a bunch of stuff. I think it was kind of a fun interview. I really enjoyed it. I don't know how folks will feel about it listening to it back, but I had a really good, it was just really nice. And he couldn't have been a nicer person. And I know there was one comment on the video. It's like, oh, Penny Arcade, like, bleh. And it's like, I don't know how, you could feel however you want about Penny Arcade or about those guys, but they are really meaningful to the tabletop ecosystem as it stands now. I mean, their cons give really big platforms for, tabletop. And one of the things that he'd mentioned, I think, to that other guy's interview is, what I kind of talked about before is that PAX or, the Penny Arcade Expo is giving this yes, it's about video games, but because of their love for tabletop, part of their whole thing is they put these tabletop areas in these video game expos to try to bring people to tabletop because they have a love for tabletop. And they're one of the folks who are really carrying sort of some of the big kind of fires for tabletop stuff forward. I mean, I know there's, Daniel got to go to Gary Con, which is maybe I'll do someday, but those are not really accessible cons for most people, right? It's hard to get to Lake Geneva. They're small. They're very much for folks who are already sort of embedded in the tabletop world. But I think where are going to be the places where people are going to discover tabletop, where the kids like my daughter, if she comes with me to one of these PAXs in a couple of years, and some other kids and young folk where there's a tremendous amount of young people there, it's going to be places like PAX that are in, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, one in Australia, right? And they're in big cities where you can really get to, and are really much more accessible, I think, to people. So regardless how I feel about PAX, I think they're doing a really excellent job. And he was nothing but nice to me. The other interviews I had, though, I did Eldritch Foundry. I did just the Many Worlds Tavern, which I think I put up yesterday. It's just a play. There's a couple of gaming themed sort of coffee tea folk. And one is Finding Familiar, I think is one. And I'd seen before, but I'd seen Many Worlds at some of the other PAXs, and their stuff looks really cute and cool. And I'm into coffee and tea. And so I kept walking by, and they were selling out all their stuff. I was like, when I went back last time, I was like, selling out. Hey, Mayasuki, thanks for the sup. Selling out. And finally I was like, let me go talk to them. And so this lady, Catherine, I didn't realize they were founded in Houston, and I used to live in Houston for a long time. And I never crossed paths with that, particular cafe, I guess they're based off of, but really nice to just kind of talk to them about coffee. And then the one that I posted to TikTok, I haven't posted it to YouTube yet, basically because it's in vertical, and I didn't really do a good job of capturing everything, but maybe I'll throw it up there and I'll just put a disclaimer like, yeah, it's in vertical. I got caught in the moment. I didn't have time to reset all my stuff because this here, you can rejigger it to vertical mode. You can, turn it on its side, and you can take these off, put it on the side, but you kind of got to move some things around. I think this ends up being the top, and I didn't have time. And so it was kind of caught in the moment. I just did it. I was set up vertical, and so I shot it in vertical. But it was called Eldritch RPG, which is another VTT. It is very similar to Roll. It'll be interesting to see how them and Roll are kind of competing in the same space. And they're doing very similar things, like having kind of character sheets and some of those integrations, but they're not going the full Roll20 or what's the other one? Fantasy Grounds or Foundry, I guess, also where they're leaving out some of that, right? Some of those connections. So you can roll dice you can attack, you can see the stats and things, but you're not doing the like rolling that through mechanically then hits, and then mechanically, let's say, has damage, and then all that gets reflected automatically in the character sheet. They're keeping these separations. Now they say they're doing it intentionally, that is an intentional choice they've made, because they feel like you lose something. It becomes too much like a video game if the system is doing everything for you, it's an interesting take. I don't know if that's marketing, if that's a kind of a marketing cover for we just haven't developed it yet or whatnot. I don't know. But it is definitely interesting that they're looking at that and saying, okay, this is something that we don't want to do, not because maybe technically we can't or whatever. We don't want to. Like we're going to leave that to the side. And I don't know how I feel about it personally. It's a pretty program. It's got animated backgrounds. They don't have yet, anyway, the kind of video chat elements, but they have lots of systems in there already. They have some of the Free League and Modiphius stuff. I think they're going to have more. They don't have, I don't know if or maybe they do have a marketplace yet. I'm not exactly certain how their marketplace works, but it's very similar to Roll. They do have a subscription model though. So they have a free tier, which I think is 3 games if you're a GM, maybe 3 PCs if you're a player, and then and then maybe 1 or 2 subscription tiers. Not super expensive, but it's interesting because it's another one. And they're doing a Kickstarter, or they just came off a Kickstarter, something Kickstarter, something. So look them up. I'll try to get in there. I don't know if I got the person's card or not. maybe I'll see if I can get it, or I could probably just sign up for the free tier just to give it a shot. But it looks pretty. They have some animated backgrounds that they do, and they definitely, I think they said that they have someone they said some map maker, one of these cartographer, like game or RPG cartographers, is putting some work on there, and they had some different kind of maps with different flavors of maps. I think you could, I don't know if it's purchased, however it is, there's something going on there. But it's neat to see someone else taking that, I guess, going down this particular path. It is very interesting that it really is close to roll, and I'll see how that shakes out, because I feel like it seems like maybe there's, these sort of, I guess maybe we're looking at, there's 3 different sorts of VTTs coming out, and someone can correct me if there's something else. One style is there is no central VTT. It's a distinct set of tools, right? And this would be using something to map, using Discord for voice and chat, using, right, you're cobbling together a few different tools. Your system is dispersed. It's over multiple apps. So that'd be one. Your second type of VTT would be, I think, this kind of role type, this other type, where you are in which you're setting up your framework is in there. You have a nice kind of dashboard. You sort of have your automated dice rolls. You have character sheets you can enter in there. You may have some game specific mechanics, I think mostly built into the kind of character sheet type output, but you're not doing a full integration. And maybe Owlbear Rodeo in kind of a different way is in there. So they're not doing, I guess maybe I would say partially integrated systems. So Owlbear Rodeo is more the kind of mapping and dice rolling, though maybe it fits in the other one where you need multiple tools kind of thing. I don't remember if Owlbear Rodeo had video or had chat built in. And then you have your full, just all encompassing, everything is in the system. Nothing is, as much as possible, everything is automated, everything is hooked in, everything is mechanically connected, which would be your Roll20 Fantasy Grounds. I'm guessing, like I said, I think Foundry works that way. Someone can correct me if they're not, but all that stuff. So it's kind of interesting to see how these things are going on. I've said forever that one of the things I would love is to use these kind of VTTs to automate the stuff that is too crunchy for me to want to do manually. And the one thing with Roll or this other one is that they don't, by design, it seems like they're not doing that. So if you're playing a crunchy system, you're gonna have to do crunch yourself. I mean, it'll tell you can kind of hook in the dice and you can hook in some stuff for somewhat from your character sheet, but a lot of the other stuff you're gonna have to do the crunch on your own. It's an interesting choice. But talk to them. It's a very pretty setup. It's also web-based, I think, like Roll is, like Owlbear Rodeo, which is probably the next. Maybe it's going to be the next thing. I mean, they're doing so much with being able to run stuff in your browser, and you don't have to worry, right? As long as the whatever you're running it on can, you have the right formats. If there's screens that you could format things properly so they display and are readable, then as long as you have a modern browser, you can kind of do these things. So I don't know what that means for stuff that runs still more app driven. Like I think right, like Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds, maybe you could play them in the browser, but I think they're app driven. Am I correct like that? But it's an interesting world. Ian says like inventory management. Yeah, I think you can definitely manage your inventory on your character sheet, but you have to do it manually. It's not going to be like I fire my bow and the automatically subtracts an arrow from your management, whatever it does, things like that. So it kind of depends what you want. I thought some of the stuff I remember watching, it might have been Matt Colville messing around with Fantasy Grounds and the neat stuff you can do in there. And I think that stuff has a place. It's got some I always thought the thing was cool where you could write in the log and you could change your language to some creature language, and then it would come out as gibberish, except for the person, if their character knew that language, then they'd get the actual English text. I thought that stuff was really neat. But I also know there's kind of a price to be paid for all those integrations. So, it is what it is. But those are kind of the main things, the main folks I talked to, the main things that I did. I did a lot of wandering around, which I enjoy, but man, it's tiring after a while, going up and around. I didn't do any talks, or I didn't go to any of the kind kind of presentation, sort of talk stuff. To me, it's just when they are. I mean, the big thing that happens is like, what time are they? Where are they in relation to where I am at that moment? If it's, it's in 10 minutes, it's way on the other side of the thing. Like, I don't know if I'm going to go. There was nothing that was so, I just needed I felt like, I got to see this one. And then they also could be kind of time consuming. You're spending an hour. Sometimes that's nice when you need a break. Like, I get to go sit and watch this thing, but I never was in the position to get it. Okay. Ian says Roll20 is an app. Fantasy Grounds or Roll20 is a web-based. Fantasy Grounds is an app. Okay. Gotcha. I didn't do any talks this time, or I didn't go to any this time. I just did a lot of wandering. I had some adventures on the T, which is the sort of Boston's kind of transit, sort of subway-ish transit. Hey, Hunter Fox, how are you? Transit system, which was kind of fun because my cousin, it's not actually, as a crow flies, he actually doesn't live that far from the convention center, but of course, you're in a city, so you don't get to you don't get to drive or move it anywhere close to the straight line that a crow may fly. So getting there through the trains is a little bit tricky. Took me a bit to kind of figure it out. But I did that. Had some nice coffee in his neighborhood. Had some good Chinese food Saturday night also in his neighborhood. My cousin, he played in 2 Wingspan tournaments. If you like board games, he played Wings. He's a big, I like Wingspan a lot too, but he's a big Wingspan player. Played 2 tournaments, didn't do well on the Thursday one. The Saturday and the Sunday one came up second place out of the field. They had like 5 or 6 tables with 5 players each, and then, or I guess it was 5 tables, like 5 players each, and then the next round, and then just go to a second round, which is all the winners from those 5 tables come into a single table, and then they play. And he was second out of them, so he was hyped up about that, which I can understand. I'm trying to think if there's anything else missing or I'm not thinking about. If you guys have anything, hey Frederick, yeah, drink more coffee. I definitely drank my share of coffee. Brothers and Sisters Coffee in Brookline. Cheers to them, because their coffee was good, and it's right near the T station too. It was kind of wet and rainy on Saturday, which is a little bit of a bummer. Sunday, the weather was beautiful, but of course I'm inside, so it didn't really matter much. Trying to think what else. Probably later on in the week, I'll grab all those Aliens books, and we can kind of go through those. And we'll also do like an unboxing. I probably won't stream it because I don't think that's gonna be in the stream, but I'll stream look at Icon, so you can see what that's all about, because I saw the notifications, but I hadn't actually really looked into it. So I'm not even really sure what this is. Ancient god vessels of cured skin and soot black wood, as rare and as valuable as they are blasphemous. Seems cool. I bet you they're pretty neat. It was interesting seeing, I'm not gonna look. I don't want to. I guess it's gonna sound weird. So I'm not gonna sound weird, but we had the whole OGL thing that happened, and I think the good guys kind of came up. I wouldn't say it's like a total victory for the good guys, but I think we got a lot of things. We got some concessions that I think are worthwhile. Corporations are going to corporate, so that the fight is never going to be over. They're always going to try to be weaselly and sneaky, right, and all that jazz. But I'm going to say, like, being on the ground there at PAX, bumping around the role-playing game area. I did not go to the Acquisitions Incorporated game, but I was watching some of the video today and last night of their game, and the arena or the stage area where they do it seemed like it was full. They were running, as usual, they're running Adventures League's games there, and I don't have any attendance numbers, but I think they were doing well. The Gehenna games I was mentioning seem to be on the kind of grimdark type running games. Was also running, I think, 5e or 5e style games, something of that nature. And so I guess what I'm saying here, what I'm going a roundabout way of saying is, we had the whole thing with the OGL, and I would not have known it if I didn't know about the OGL stuff. I would not have known it from coming to the con. And that's not to say that I expected people to be protesting or throwing eggs at Wizards of the Coast or D&D people there or people running D&D or any kind of boo hiss. But I guess what I am saying is I don't feel like you could look at that and see that, oh, there's a real downtick on D&D as sort of the big dog in the the 800-pound gorilla because of all this stuff that's happened. And I guess it makes me feel more and more another realization of how much in the bubble that we live in. Like, I know that one of the guys in my own home gaming group had heard about the OGL kerfuffle, but he's the one who's more, I think, pays attention to more tabletop stuff. The other player, my other player, doesn't pay attention at all and had no idea. I didn't poll people, right? I didn't ask Jerry, right? I was like, I'm not gonna, and I was wondering if people were gonna dig me for not like asking tough questions, like why is Acquisition Incorporated playing D&D in a post OGL world or anything like that. I'm like, I'm not. The guy's being nice enough. This wasn't a planned interview. I'm not gonna. I'm not here to sort of ambush him on the street with that. But the point is, I guess, is that you wouldn't have known it. You wouldn't know it. Yeah, maybe they lost a little weight, or as Terrence said, they gained an extra 100 pounds. I'm not saying. And the thing is, I think that's what I wonder. Is like, if you're Paizo, like I didn't see any Paizo there. Zilch, zero. I mean, okay, at the indie, I was looking when I played Morkborg, that was kind of in the indie games section, so I wasn't expecting somebody to be running Pathfinder 1E or 2E, granted, but I just think like, man, if you're, and maybe you say, okay, well, Todd, these conventions they're set up months and months and months ahead of time, so who's gonna come, and you can't, even though this OGL stuff hit in January and December, so there was no time to lose, no time to get something. But I just thinking, if there was a spot where you kind of hop in and say, hey, we're gonna bring you some 2E, and we're gonna use this momentum we've got or something. I feel like I didn't see it. All the products out there, the third-party vendors, were all still heavily 5E focused. I mean, Free League is their own game and there were folks doing their own stuff, but other than that, it was still lots of 5E stuff. And I don't know, I guess ultimately, I don't know, no one can say the future, and we did get a lot of good. There is some good that's going to come out of the OGL kerfuffle. There's probably some bad that's going to come out of it also. But I think that people, if you were looking for, or if I was looking around thinking like, all right, am I going to see signs that this big thing, or big thing, at least in our little bubble, right? One of the aftershocks of this thing that seems to be shaking the entire tabletop, or at least tabletop role-playing game world. And here at PAX East, where granted it's not a tabletop centric convention, there is a tabletop corner and there is a role-playing game part of that. Like, ooh, what are we going to see here? Are we going to see less D&D? Or we're going to see more of this other thing? Are we going to see some folks coming in trying to ride the wave? And I didn't see it. I didn't see it. I didn't see anything. It seemed the same. It seemed the same as it's ever been. And it just makes me wonder, about these things. Not that we shouldn't have fought the fight, not that they should get off the hook, not anything like that, but maybe how the internet or just social media or just these bubbles that we end up living in can just kind of warp our perceptions of what's going to happen. Because the folks that were saying that like this is, the Wizards has killed themselves and they're dead and all this stuff, like I don't know, maybe it'll still happen, maybe we aren't too far along yet, and maybe we get around to PAX Unplugged when it's all tabletop centric. We'll see the shifting and the winds have shifted and all that, but I don't think you could have said anything from here. There was some PAX merch that was kind of D&D flavored, not necessarily copyright WotC, but they had shirts with some cool shirts featuring some different D&D creatures, a gelatinous cube, an owl bear, might have been a beholder, that kind of thing. It seemed like same as it ever was. Now, maybe Gary Con, where Daniel was different. Maybe some of these other cons that are coming up is different. I do feel like, just to continue on this little tirade, that if you're Paizo and you're not trying to jump out, you've sold according to numbers, all these things, and you've already done all your inventory and all this stuff, and you want to, I feel, man, get out to these cons, do something, because Adventures League is just going right along, and I heard some media folks sitting there talking about like, oh, one guy said like, oh, I'm going to go on the floor and go buy some stuff. I think I was like, oh, what are you going to go buy? He's like, I'm going to go buy some D&D stuff. It's like, yeah, people are still into it. And this is granted, they might not mean D&D as in specifically something that Wizards of the Coast is going to make money on, but just, D&D still Still the big dog. What's his name? Talking Heads, David Byrne, same as it ever was, man. Same as it ever was. We'll see. And and it's not that I'm trying to say like nothing changes, right? Like I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. I'm not trying to be someone that's saying, well, you shouldn't fight the good fight because you're not going to win anything. I'm not trying to say anything like that. Like I feel like everything folks did, maybe I wish we could have done more, whatever. But what I am saying is you get a lot of folks who may have seen that and felt like changes in the air. Like I don't know how the D&D movie has gone, but everyone who's seen it that I've seen online seems to have enjoyed it. I will probably go see it this weekend with my daughter if it's still playing locally to me, and it has nothing to do with me wanting to give Hasbro money or not give Hasbro money. It's really more about this is a movie that I feel like my daughter and I and D&D or just fantasy role playing can bond on. So I'd like to do that. That's all that's about kind of thing. But a little realism, maybe it's a list my cynicism coming out or whatnot, but not much is, at least as far as I can tell. On that front, nothing has changed. And I do feel like, and maybe they didn't have a choice and all this stuff, and maybe we'll see it later, but I feel like it's a huge missed opportunity of some of these folks like Paizo who want to fill in the gap, who are like, oh, you're dissatisfied, come join us. If they're not taking advantage of this by getting out there, like great, they've sold a bunch more copies. Great. I didn't see anybody running it at PAX East. Nobody was putting out games doing it. It's like you gotta, man, get yourselves out there, get a booth, even if it's a last second thing. I just feel like reach out and get out there because we want to keep the momentum of just so that people understand or recognize other alternatives of play, just to diversify the landscape. You got to get them out there, and hopefully they're going to do it in other cons later this year, but they certainly wasn't here. It is what it is, I guess. Brian Smith says, sensationalism seeps in almost all coverage of any type of news. Yeah, it definitely can feel that way. Let's see. You guys have anything else going on you guys want to chat about before I go? Oh, Terrence says John Wick 4 was fun too. Oh, cool. I'm glad about that. I've been sort of enjoying the John Wick films a little bit less each outing. I still enjoy them. I'm not saying they're terrible, but I love the first one. Then the second one, it's pretty darn good. Third one, it's good. I'm hoping they can maybe just keep it at the good. It's hard to keep up with those films because you have to keep getting more. It's kind of like the fast films, and that it just seems like there's no way to do them without just being a little bit more ridiculous each time. Because you got to just push that envelope, and you just get to a certain point where you don't realize because you've been. You start off here, and then you're up here and here and here, and suddenly you're kind of off the charts. And then you look back, like the fast movies, now they're in space, and someone's gonna look back and go, how the heck did this happen? Like you've gone beyond the pale, as they say, and you don't really realize it because you haven't felt it, right? And then suddenly it's like, how did we get this story about cars, and now they're driving vintage souped up Mustangs in space? Like, and then it doesn't make sense anymore. And John Wick has been kind of going down that a little bit, but Donnie Yen's in it. I'm a big fan of Donnie Yen. There was a cool YouTube video where a guy was talking about Donnie Yen and not just Donnie Yen, but talking about him working as a stunt guy in a lot of these Asian fight films. And apparently those guys they just really just hit you. Like he was talking about, I think, Donnie Yen, that if you're a stunt guy working with Donnie Yen, he's just punching you. Like he's, because of like the style, at least with like making maybe the Hong Kong kind of film, maybe not Hollywood films, but it's like he's not holding back, like just the way they work. I think he also worked with Tony Jaa. It was kind of the same. It's like these guys, they don't have time to like sit there and try to hold back. So they're just, that you're working with a Donnie Yen, like he's hitting you. That's just part of the job description is you're gonna get thumped by Donnie Yen. That's just how this stunt is gonna go. But it was a good time. It was a good time at PAX. I can't believe I talked to Jerry Holkins. That's just crazy because I mentioned to him, and it's in the beginning of the video, where I had years ago at one of the early New York Comic Cons that I'd gone to. They had a little, I think they'd already started PAX by then, but it wasn't what it is now. In any case, they signed my Acquisitions Incorporated comic book. I think I just bought to have them sign it. I just got it there and had them sign it. And then to now run into them again. And, he's got these massive worldwide, convention system on top of everything else they do. It's just pretty pretty wild and crazy. But he was super nice. And I think when I was talking to the guy from Free League, and I was mentioning that I talked to him, and whatever, and he was like, "Yeah, he's just really nice." And I just think he's just a really nice, just super super nice. I really, I really can't stress enough how nice. And he mentioned, so one of the things that he mentioned, I guess I'll talk about is, a lot of these cons. So I got a media badge for PAX, and I do that because I reached out because PAX has PAX has them, because not every con does. I think most of the cons I've looked at don't have it. ShireCon, I mean, it's a super tiny con. There's no media badges. I don't think GaryCon has a media badge type thing. At least I don't remember if they did last time I checked. So some cons they don't have that thing. It's just you buy the badge, you don't, and that's fine. But it does mean that, especially for me, traveling or doing whatever, the less I have to spend out of pocket just to get there, the better. And look, I'm not a big channel or anything like that, but I'm putting out content that is referencing and highlighting and acting as an advert for the convention. So to me, it's not out of line to say, "Hey man, could you throw me a little bone so I can come and talk about your convention," right? Essentially. But they don't have it, which is fine. Now, Gen Con, I've reached out for badges a few times, and I've been denied each time I've reached out, which I don't not get it, right? Gen Con is kind of the granddaddy of all cons. Apparently they're like super strict, super rigid. I've heard stories. I want to say it was one of the guys from Inkwell Ideas was telling me a couple of years ago, it might have been at that first PAX Unplugged that I went to, that if you get a booth, if you manage to get a booth at Gen Con, one, you can't ever give it up. You can't ever not go. And two, you can't ever mess up. And like messing up can mean something like packing up a little bit early or doing anything. Like you cannot have any infractions, because what happens is, one, there's some massive queue, and you get in line, and you have all these people maybe ahead of you, but then other people will have infractions, other things will happen, companies will close, whatever. And so you can move in like the better spots, go to the people who are sort of in good standing the longest, so that you get in line. And then if you can stay in good standing, you'll kind of move up into I'm in the better areas, right? We're good now, right? We're here. If you ever get out of line, if you ever have an infraction, one, you just get dropped, never to be hurt. Like if you get it, you're not getting back in there, right? You lose your booth because you pack in. What happens is a lot of these cons, they want you to be there for the whole thing, which makes sense. You don't want to show up like Sunday at PAX and half the booths have closed up, because maybe they did really well, or maybe they weren't doing very well. They decided, hey, you know what? It's a long drive back to whatever. We got a van full of stuff. Let's just pack them and leave. They don't want you to do that. But it can be to the point, I think, where you maybe they see you packing it in like a couple minutes early or something like that, right? Like it can get kind of fun. It doesn't have to be that drastic an infraction, but you get just dropped off the list. Or if it's in a case of you can't attend one year, you end up at the back of the queue. So however many years, and Gen Con's been going a long time, and if you've been in a company for a long time, however many years you've put in, you lose it all. There's no we'll hold your space, we'll give it to somebody else, and next year you're back. It's like, nope, you're at the end of the line. So they're very rigid, very kind of old school, very whatever. So I get not getting. I understand why I didn't get a badge there, because I'm a nobody. I'm a nobody. Look, I'm just gonna be honest, right? Look at my subscriber count, and it's better than some. It's a whole lot worse than a whole lot of other people, and I totally get it when someone's like, "You are not worth, however the money on a badge is, you are not worth it." I totally get it. When I said that to Jerry, I said, because I said to him, one of the first things, and I don't know if it's on that video or not, but I said, listen, one of the things I really appreciated was you guys gave me access when basically no one else is giving me access, right? I'm out there. I'm a new creator. I'm trying to get out there. I wanted to get out to some cons. I'm trying to get out there. I can't get access. And it's something like, look, you pay for a 4-day badge. It's a couple $100, depending on which convention it is, it's a couple $100 on top of a couple $100 right here and there and that. And then for me, it's not just me just hanging out. It's me doing work. A lot of times the stuff that I enjoy doing, but still it's work. I'm not out there just walking the con for fun. I'm trying to talk to people. I'm doing like I am. I feel like I'm working. All right. I'm working. And I could probably try to get a tax write-off or something, but whatever. And he said that, look, when PAX, and he told me, he said, when PAX first started, there weren't this kind of idea of being an influencer didn't exist. And he said that like the whole point, or one of the whole ideas around PAX was to get the word out and to help folks who are just getting in, so that their whole thing has been to make it easy for content creators, for everybody to get started. And I really appreciate that sort of attitude that he had about it, because they do, I think, make it fairly easy to get access, to get your foot in the door. And I'm sure that probably is true also if you're on a vendor side or you're on other sides, to help you kind of get in, because it was all kind of grassroots type stuff, as opposed to something like Gen Con, which is sort of, they're the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and they're just going to act like it, because there is only one Gen Con. And if you really want to be there, you probably got to be there. If you're anybody of note, you want to be there. So you just kind of got to play their game, because there isn't any competitor to Gen Con, right? But I really appreciated them for that attitude, because it's enabled me to go now. This is my fourth PAX. Brian Smith says, sounds like getting tickets to Lambeau. Never give up your spot. Yeah, pretty much. Never give up your spot. You're never giving it back. So when I was talking to Free League, they mentioned a couple other cons that were really good. One was Gamehole Con, which I think is also way up the heck in Wisconsin. I think it's October. I don't think that's on my radar for this year. I gotta kind of I'll scope it out just to check it out, but it seems like it's too much, and it's far. The nice thing about the PAXs on the East Coast is they're places that I have reasonable access to. I could drive to Boston. I have family there, so that cuts out a lot of the major costs. And of course, I have a badge, so the costs are just food, stuff I buy, public transportation, gas. So very reasonable. Philly, I got to pay for the hotel room, granted, but I don't have to fly there. I could drive. Once I'm getting into something like Wisconsin now, I think Daniel drove from the greater New York area to Wisconsin, and it is Wisconsin, right? Lake Geneva. And I told him maybe next year we'll do it. I'll go in there with him, and we can split up the driving, and we can. But that's it gets to be a kind of a bigger investment. So there's Origins, and then which Origins is attached to Gamma, which I think is the Realtor. I don't know, or something. It's like I don't know what it is, but Origins, they don't offer. You have to be a Gamma Media member, and if you're not a Gamma Media member, and I am not, obviously, then I think it's a reduced rate, but you still have to pay for the trip. And then the other one you mentioned was Gamehole Con, which I don't think has badges at all, but I got to double check. And then Origin. So it's cool to hear about those two. I'd heard of Gamehole Con before, but apparently that one's really good for just folks who are all about RPGs, all about doing stuff. At some point, maybe I'll get to go to those. But I guess I just wanted to finish by just saying that it's really nice, because I think the Penny Arcade Expo PAX kind of helped bring down some of those barriers to participating in entry, which other cons don't. And maybe because they're small, because they're niche, or because they're more professional, or they feel like they're kind of the big leagues and therefore don't need to. Whatever the reason is, it's not going to be the same for every con, but it does. It's like you can make it easy for people to come and kind of do the stuff, or you can make it more difficult, right? And PAX has been really good to me about making it easy to go. So I hope that I'm just able to go back at least to one or these two. I'm not going to PAX West unless I happen to be in Seattle or something at the time. I'm not going to head all the way out there, but hopefully it'll just be something that every year I'll just go to these two PAXs. Hopefully in the next whatever, I'll be able to arrange GaryCon by hook or by crook, and it won't be a choice, because I wouldn't have been able to go to both of them this year, and I wasn't going to go to GaryCon, so I hadn't been set up for that. So it was just go to PAX. But in a year or two, when maybe I'm ready to go to GaryCon, hopefully they won't be in the same weekend, which is unfortunate. Anyhow, folks, hopefully this rambling talk about PAX East was interesting to somebody. But it was fun. It was fun. I do recommend doing it, especially if so the one thing I'll say, I guess my cousin and then his nephews, his sister's kids, one of them came, and one of their friends came on the Sunday. And the one thing that's nice about PAX East, maybe a little bit more than say PAX Unplugged, is because it's mixed video games and tabletop. Now, granted, space-wise, it's 4/5 video games, 1/5 tabletop. But still, I think there's enough tabletop there to do stuff. There's a big board gaming area where you can play board games and obviously play role-playing games, and they have, you know, some things there. But the thing that's nice about this is PAX Unplugged, it's all about tabletop. And if you're not into tabletop, you're not going to really find anything there for you because it's all tabletop. Here, because it's video games and tabletop, you had these young guys that were with us, and they were more into the video games, but we could all go, you know, so as a family, so to speak, it's a greater extended family, and everybody could find something to do. My cousin's partner, she was able to go off and find stuff that was to her taste in kind of games and experiences. My cousin, he went off and he was like, all right, I'm playing Wingspan, I'm playing Azul. Like, he was getting all these tournaments and he was doing that thing. Great. I was doing role-playing games and talking to folks in that area. Great. And then the two young dudes were out there looking at like whatever, just going around and playing every kind of demo of every game that they could get in line for and doing that sort of thing. Right. And all in one spot. So the one thing about PAX East to recommend it is if you have a mixed group or a mixed family of mixed interests where, hey, I love my tabletop role-playing games, or I love my board games, but I love video games, whatever, you can get kind of everybody into that building, and everyone can scatter to the four winds, assuming they're of age to be able to do that and they don't need guidance, and then find some stuff to play and do that, which is really nice, I think, in terms of getting, if you're looking at like, well, I'd like to go, but then my wife or my whoever I'm with, they're not going to like it because they don't like board games, but they like to play their Switch, or they like to play Xbox, they like to play PC gaming. It's like, great. There's a whole area of, they had a Mario Kart 8 tournament they watched. I watched some of this Splatoon, like the Northeast Splatoon championship thing. Like, there was all kinds of stuff going on, stuff that was on, PC gaming on Steam. They had vintage console games in the room. They had just tons of different things that you can get into and enjoy and just be in kind of one spot, which is cool. And I'm not gonna say it's unique or anything, but it's something to consider. Something to consider that's an advantage of not being hyper focused on just tabletop. All right, folks, that's all I got. I have blathered on long enough. Probably, maybe tomorrow, maybe not, sometime this week, I will go over Icon. Again, that's probably will just be a video. I will definitely stream stuff about aliens, and I got to go back and look at and this has been, and the troubleshooters, including, I got to go through these, the U-boat mystery troubleshooters. So we'll do that. Depending on how the week goes, maybe that'll be next week. Stuff that's on tap this week and next at Hexed Press. Check your local listings for more information. Folks, if you give a thumbs up on your way out, that would be awesome. If you feel like subscribing and you're not subscribed already, that would also be awesome. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I will talk to you later. Bye now.